Welcome to People Love Process. In our industry, there's so many ways a creative person can draw now. It's pretty amazing compared to even 10 years ago, let alone 20 years or even further back in our industry. The fundamental skill, however, is still the same, but the tools and formats have progressed from analog to digital. Now, analog is still around. I know a lot of people who prefer to sketch and draw in analog. A lot of traditional illustrators still do that, of course, and some amazing artists like Tommy Kane, I follow on Instagram, has impeccable sketchbooks that he puts out and shares his post all the time. You might want to check him out. It's a lot of fun to see where he's at and what he's sketching and what he's drawing. Now, of course, I prefer to draw in analog because that's how I learned and enjoy the tactile experience and the physical sketches it produces and the paper. I love drawing on this Nina translucent stock. If you want to know more about all of that, just make sure to go to ppluv.com. It'll bring you to a page on my website, and I share all of my both analog tools and digital tools I use to create everything you see on this channel. Now, that said, you could draw on a Wacom Cintiq. I have a Cintiq. I've done one movie on People Love where I utilize that, drawing with the blob brush and the Cintiq tablet and the stylus pen. Or you could use an Apple Pencil on an iPad. That's what my daughter Savannah does all of her drawing on, whether it's sketches or final illustration. She loves an app she started using probably 9 years ago called Clip Studio Paint. She really loves it. It's a pretty amazing application, actually. Software can even replicate analog media like a pencil brush. So if we take a look at this sketch, this was a sketch I did when I was putting together my brand character course earlier this year. And it was one I was considering to do as the primary creative project within the course, showing all the various stages and everything for different movies. But it's a little out there. It's a little crazy. So I got a little more, I don't know how to put it, safer with the content because I didn't want people getting offended. Well, why are you drawing a stomach or whatever? I thought it was cool. I still think it's cool. But there's people that will sketch on an iPad like this and they're using brushes, whether it's Procreate or any other app, and they can get that simulated kind of pencil look. Or as I did, you can just draw it with a pencil. I just slapped it on an iPad to kind of explain that. My daughter, of course, is just an amazing illustrator. So make sure to look her up, Savannah Glitchka. You can find her on LinkedIn. And then you can get access to all of her social channels and see the artwork she does on a regular basis. She's always inspiring me, so a lot of fun to follow. So as always, my process started in analog. We're not going to be doing this character, though. All that said, I may come back to him at some point and turn it into a movie for the YouTube channel because I think it'd be a fun one. And I kind of thought I would do hand lettering with this as well. So there's that component to it. Now, where my process started for what we're going to go through in this movie, it started here. And once again, this was a concept sketch I did for my brand character course. And I ultimately decided not to do this one or the previous one I showed you. I went with another idea that aligned with the overall project I kind of documented throughout that course on LinkedIn Learning. But I love this guy, and this has been pinned up since I did this course earlier this year, and I've wanted to get around to it, and I finally have. And this was my original sketch. Now, if you look at the pencil size in the sketch, this sketch was a lot smaller. I just blew it up so you can see it on screen easier. But I love the pose of the character. I like the fact he had a little bug on his finger and he's happy and he's kind of walking. Now, when I was a kid, there was an artist by the name of Robert Crumb, amazing underground comic book artist. And he made popular a design that went viral in its time, way before social media, back in the late 70s, called Keep on Trucking. And it was a guy, and it was kind of in perspective, and he's just taking one giant footstep. And I always loved that design. So this was kind of inspired by that. Just making a guy proudly kind of walking. Didn't like the face, redrew the face over here. And this is where I'll just scan this in. Once again, you want to use a flatbed scanner, because I scanned this sketch in, took it into Photoshop, and then I just put my face I drew over here, which I liked. I liked having glasses on him, and kind of compose this composited sketch. It's still a rough sketch. It's still crude. And then distorted the cap of the mushroom here for the top, just to give it a little more interesting shape, but kept everything else the same. Once again, this is a pretty crude drawing. Now, even when you're drawing something that's as novel-based or novelty-based, I should say, it's always good to look at reference. So I pulled up a mushroom reference. I looked at it, even some botany illustration here in the middle. And this is where I learned they call that the cap. I didn't even know that until I saw this illustration. I didn't know what they called these down below. I knew they had them. I'd seen them before. But I didn't know they were called gills. So those are gills. Some varieties have these rings. You can see this illustration has it, but these don't have that over here. And of course, there's stem, which is going to be the body of our character. Now, a lot of creative liberty I'm taking with the botany aspect, obviously. But I do like the coloring in this photo in the bottom left and in the middle right with the red top and kind of having spots. We're going to play off of that as well. So it's always good to look at reference, even if you're not doing something that's realistic. You can pull those cues off that makes it look even better. So with this, I like to take this, print it out at a larger size, and then I go to my light pad and I slap a piece of Nina translucent stock on top of it, and I just start drawing it more precisely. Now, that's all I've done here. If I grab the sketch and move it over, you can see I always want to see what I'm working on underneath, and then on top of it, I just perfect those shapes. I just think as if I'm going to build it in vector, what shapes do I need to build? And that's the way I draw it. Do they have to be perfect? No. These glasses are going to be circular shapes, but I don't have to draw them perfectly. I just need to give myself what I like to call a roadmap to build upon. So there isn't a lot of guesswork as I move to vector, as I start building my vector shape. So that's all we're going to do here. So let's turn off the composited sketch below. I'm going to go ahead and set the transparency to this to about, probably 20. Let's do 15 like that. And then I'll lock the layer. And of course, by the way, I got my refined sketch into Illustrator the same way by using a flatbed scanner as well. I usually scan it in at 600 to 800 ppi. So I've placed this bitmap TIFF here, and the easiest place to start, and I keep reinforcing this in a lot of my movies because it's proven to be a great way to work, and that is start with the easy shapes first. And then you can struggle with the more organic, harder shapes you have to build in vector form. So the circular, elliptical shapes are always easy because all you need to create a shape like these up in the cap, the spots that are going to be on his head, is all you need is elliptical shape here. Once you have that, you can go ahead and draw a circle. If you hold Option, you can do it from the center out. So if you want it to be an oval, whether it's tall or wide, it just makes the process easier. And then you can always go in on these and adjust them. So if I select this one, you can see I just grabbed these center ones and moved them down, and that made a more squatty shape for that spot. So it doesn't look so computer driven. It's more organic. Now, on my little ladybug over here, all of these spots are perfect circles, just because I want that more iconic over there. So why am I showing you this? Because yes, you use simple shapes like this, but I also combine it with shapes that I'm going to create with the pen tool. This isn't hard to create this shape, but then I use a circular shape underneath just to trim this. So if I go to Pathfinder, go to minus front, just to trim the bottom of these eyebrows like that. I go down to here. I made the chin down here. I would select these two elliptical shapes like that to create that. I would create the tongue by taking this shape, which is on top of this shape, minus it. This gives me the little divot. Then I can select this, and then I can go ahead and unite those together. Now I'll come back later when I build the shape for the mouth, and I'll inset that shape to get this edge, and I'll edit this one. So it's a progressive type of process, building with simple shapes whenever you can. And then when you need to do more organic shapes, understanding principles are going to help you do that. And that's what we're going to cover a lot in this movie to improve your overall vector building. So those are pretty simple to do that. If we go up here, this is where I'd take all of these. They're on top of this shape, or at least make sure they're on top. We'll check it. They're on top. Then we'll select this shape. Actually, first, let's take this part, and we're just going to clone it. Command-C, Command-F. If you use the contextual menu bar, you can hit duplicate. It'll do the same thing now. I just never have that turned on. And we'll go ahead and trim that so we have the back part of his body. We'll take these, make sure these are on top. We'll select the body, and we'll minus front, so we're removing all of those to create the spots, because his body, for the most part, is going to be black. This little cut-in shape, since their wings are kind of part of their shell, and when they fly, they come apart and, flap around. So we're just going to imply that by taking this wedge and trimming that out of there. So that's how I'll build with these shapes. We'll keep the other shapes as is, because all those are going to be black, and I want these independent so I can make some other shapes to add a little detail, because these two are going to be black, but I want to see the top edge of the head, and that will allow me to create a little wedge up here that I'll color just to make sure you see those separate areas of this little bug guy. So that's where I start. I start with simple shapes. Oops, down here again on his hand. This just made that knuckle. I'll end up trimming this off when I build the rest of the hand here. The ladybug needs legs. Let's turn on the legs. Those are easy shapes as well. But now what I want to do is I want to go back to the face here, and I'm going to zoom in. Let's go ahead and zoom in on his face. So you can see we have his nose. Now we created these glasses so they're perfect circles to create the frames. But I want this nose, if we turn this off, you can see in my drawing, the nose goes right into that frame, the curve of the frame of the glasses. And that was on purpose. I didn't have to draw it perfect, but I need to build it perfect now. And so this is what I'm going to do. Now, before I jump into this, I want to explain something. Back in 2011, I wrote a book called Vector Basic Training. It was a lot of fun to write. I kind of put off the publisher for a few years until she finally asked, what would it take to get you to do this? And I said, let me write the book I want to write. They did. It came out, and since then it's been published in 7 languages: English, German, Slovakian, Spanish, Italian, Japanese, and Russian. And one of the chapters in the book is called the Clockwork Method, and that's what I want to go over with you now. So look at this nose. It was easier to build this nose independent of the shapes that make up his frames, because we can edit them and fuse them together if they're 2 separate shapes, and that's what we're going to do. But before we do this, I want to focus on the nose. Now, how did I know where to place these anchor points? Where there's the principle in my book called the Clockwork Method. Let me turn on this layer. We'll scroll down just a little bit. And this is almost like a Jedi mind trick that can help you figure out where to place anchor point location. Now, some people just default to in geometry to what are called tangents. Well, you always put it on a tangent. Well, if you're doing geometric shapes, such as letter forms on a, let's say it's a sans serif typeface, that may be the case. But when it comes to building vector art, specifically illustrative vector art, it's not always going to be the case, and it doesn't always work best doing that. That's my opinion, but I think I can prove it. So we're going to go over the clockwork method. This is the clock to represent the clockwork method. The only coordinates on the clock you need to think about is the 12 o'clock position, the 3 o'clock position, the 6 o'clock position, and the 9 o'clock position. So when you look at a shape like this nose, where are you going to place the anchor points to associate with it? Well, if we look at the nose, if this is at the top of, if we think of this shape of the nose, and it's only 1/4 of the shape of the nose here. If we think of it in a clock in this position, then you're going to put an anchor point at the 12 o'clock, an anchor point at the 9. The same on the inside part of this shape is going to replicate the same way of thinking. Do they have to be aligned with the other anchors? No. That's where you need to finesse and be smart enough to know that. Now, the other aspect of the clockwork method is if you go down here, wherever it comes to a point in terms of the shape on his nose here, gets a point. Those are easy to discern. So yes, we could think of this as the 3 o'clock point, but you're already knowing that you're going to put an anchor there because it comes to a corner in your drawing, or in this case, the coordinate of the midway between the lens of this. Well, it's going to snap basically to the 3 o'clock position on the shape of the eyeglasses. So that's an easy one to discern. Now, as it starts going down here, if you're thinking of this curve on the bottom, where are you going to place the anchor here? Well, this might be 3. This might be the 6 o'clock position of the clock if you're thinking like this. But on this one, if you start here on this anchor of this shape from here all the way to here, this line is so long, you wouldn't want to try to create it with just 2 anchor points and pulling the handles out. It's not going to be as elegant. And I found it's best to place your anchor point not in a tangent, because the tangent would be right down here approximately. It's better to place it midway, and then you get the ability to adjust it. Now, when you look at that curve of your drawing here, you might want to think of your clock as, yes, a clock, but you might want to think of it in this orientation. Well, actually, you might want to think of it as a squash clock, and then the orientation would be angled like this. That means you put your anchor point here. That's an easy one. And then you know it's going to be somewhere around here for the red one to associate with the 6 o'clock position. That's all this is. It's just a way to help you figure out your anchor point locations. You're never going to get those locations right, by the way, absolutely all the time the first time you do it, but this is going to help you get in what I call the right neighborhood to place your anchor points. Now, once we have this shape built for the nose, we've aligned it so it snaps to the 3 o'clock position on these glasses, this lens here. We're going to take this, which is a throwaway shape, and I'm going to select the glasses, and I'm just going to trim them because this is all we need, because this nose is just snapping right to there. So let's put that back into position. What I usually do is I'll go into, click into isolation mode, and I'll go to my pin tool. I might put an extra anchor point, and I'll purposely overlap it so it's going to overlap this shape. And I find it, because sometimes for whatever reason, Illustrator will actually create a compound, but you'll still see a line here, and this prevents that. Why does it do that? I have no idea. I'm not going to worry about it. I just figured out how to fix it as that happens. So once I unite it with the Pathfinder, you can see we now have one continuous shape. I'll go down here, take this little area, which is the shadow, and we'll unite that. So that's all I did to create that nose. Now we're going to get back to the clockwork method because this was a pretty simple example of that. So once I have all those shapes united in the face, they look like this. That's great. Let's go ahead and zoom in on the eyes, because the final artwork, I don't want these interior shapes of the glasses, the lens, if you will. These won't be filled with color. I want to imply that there's a lens there, but I ultimately don't want that whole shape to be a color. And this is where I've just gone in, created these rectangle shapes to be what will end up being the reflection off these lenses. I'll select this lens shape and I'll go intersect. So wherever the two shapes or objects, vector objects overlap, it creates those shapes. So you can see it now has these reflective lines, and I have this little wedge to define this edge here. We'll do the same up here. Select that, select the lens, go intersect to create that kind of detail. Now, I want to get back to the clockwork method, but there's one principle where we had a teacher in art school by the name of Fred Griffin, and Fred taught graphic design. He was an illustrator, but I never took him for illustration. But in the graphic design course, he had all of these rules called the Griffin Design Code. And one of the codes was called contour continuation, meaning making your viewer see one thing, drawing their eye around and leading into something else. And that always intrigued me. And I've taken that principle and I use it in illustration all the time. So let's go ahead and turn on this layer, and you can see this whole shape, which if I zoom in on this part, you can see this was easy because if I turn this off, you can see my drawing came right here. So I knew I was going to start in the middle of this shape. And that's all I did to create this shape. I start here. So if I go ahead and select this, you can see the two anchors. I start here. Let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit, but it kind of wraps around, creates the top of his head, swings down the front of his body into his back leg, and terminates at this point here. So it was better to build this as one shape to kind of control that motion of those shapes. And I think it always looks better when you do that. Whereas if I would have tried to build this shape separate and then start up here and build this, it might not look as fluid. And I really wanted this to look fluid and kind of continue that contour all the way around. Now here's the same principle on this, but just to a lesser degree. I just had to start here, and it's one solid shape, and this will be a separate shape to create the rest of his foot. Now, I use the clockwork method, so let's go ahead and turn on this layer here, and I'll go ahead and zoom in a bit so you can see this easier. But notice on the clock, in my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to keep this at an angled rotation. So all the blue, which is 9 o'clock, you can see how that applies. The 12 is up here. Now, is this the perfect tangent? Well, no. The perfect tangent, if you wanted to focus on tangent, would be right about here at the top. And I just find it works better if you angle and you build some of those curves at an angle. To me, it just looks better because I've tried sticking to tangents at times and I'm just going, it just doesn't look as good. And I thought, am I just fooling myself thinking that? No, I really think it looks better at angles, not all the time, but don't get hung up on tangents thinking it's like a rule you're breaking. You should break any rule if by doing so it makes it look better. That's my opinion when it comes to design, when it comes to illustration. There are no hard and fast rules, in my opinion, especially in the creative process. You always want to step outside of that thinking to get better results, in my opinion. So again, the principle of the clockwork method, I angled it at the top, but if you look at this clock here, I kind of went back to that 90 degrees where I have 9 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Even on the foot, this starts off as a 12 o'clock. Think a large, distorted, kind of squashed vertical clock, and you get the 3 o'clock, the 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, back to the 12 for the top of his foot. So hopefully this will help you. Now, my book that I wrote and rewrote in 2015 has a whole chapter on this. So in the exercise files for this movie, I've included that chapter so you can see all the examples and everything else that I explain in that chapter to help you kind of get this principle locked in so you can start using it to improve your craftsmanship. I really do think it's going to help you. Now, if you want to get access to my full book, once again, just visit pplluv.com. It will take you to my website, the page on my website for People Love Process, and there's a link to my book. My book comes with 7 hours of video and 4 gigabytes of source files you can deconstruct. Everything shown in the book is included in those resource files. So check that out if you're interested. Let's keep moving forward on this, and we're going to turn on all of the body shapes here so you can see all the shapes I created for the body, and that includes down here. Let me just show you how I handled this down here, where I created this shape to create the connection here. But after I did that, I'm going, well, I want this to be black. That's not going to be a color. So I just create another shape and just snap it here to create those curves to pull off that. So I like building in pieces, not trying to build everything in one solid shape. It just makes it a lot go a lot faster. Oh, you know what I did? I forgot one thing. So we're going to step back one step. We're going to go back to contour continuation. So I explained the clockwork method to you, but I didn't really show you doing it. And so that's what I want to do now. I want to build this arm here, and we're going to use the same magenta outline I always use. So let's go to the pen tool. Once again, wherever it comes, a point gets a point. So that point is going to start here. And then you have to determine where's your next anchor point. Well, I know there's going to be one here, and that'll be like a 3 o'clock position if you think in the clockwork method. But from this point to this first point, that's a long path, and you don't want to try to form that with just 2 anchor points. So I know I'm going to need another anchor point in between, somewhere around here, and I'll just pull it out a little bit. I don't try to form the full path at this point. I just know I'm going to come back and finesse it. So we'll put it there. This will be about a 3 o'clock position, so I'll put it there. Once again, pull out the handles just to have access to them. Go to a 12 o'clock position. Up here, somewhere right around there, pull out the handles, swing around to a 9 o'clock position. So again, we're going to put it right about here like this. And this is such a shallow curve, I don't even think we need a 6 o'clock down here. If you wanted to try that, you could, but I think it'd be easier to just go right to the end, wherever it comes to a point, gets a point, then we'll start going the opposite direction. And this, and some of you might be thinking, well, why don't you just use a stroke and build it one time, then expand it? Because I don't want this to be one distinct weight all the way around. I want subtle variation of thick and thins to make it look more custom and less replicated. So we're going to place another one right here at a 9 o'clock position. Pull these out, go up here, and we'll place this one right about the same position we did the previous 12 o'clock. And again, this will go into a 3 o'clock like this. We'll put it right around the same location here, midway. And then wherever it comes to a point, gets a point. So we'll put one right about there, and then we'll close the shape. So this is what I usually do. I do a rough draft like this, or a first pass, if you will. Now, what I want to do is I want to go back and finesse the Bezier curves. Bezier curves are what you see here with handles. Pierre Bezier worked for Renault. You'll learn that if you read my book. And he got tired of all the boxy car designs at Renault, a French automobile factory. And so he came up with the math for Bezier curves so they could do more beautiful car body designs for cars back in the day. So kind of some interesting history. Now I want to adjust this. Now, to get access at these anchor handles, I use a plugin, but let's say you don't have that plugin. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to, I just realized I don't have all my palettes open that I normally do. So now I can't remember where that was, where it is, because there it is. Let's go ahead and open this up. I usually have this open so I don't even have to go to the toolbar. It's always right here. We're going to go to Anchor tool, and we'll select it. This allows you can grab a path like this and you can just pull it, and that'll immediately give access to an anchor on a handle on an anchor that didn't have it, like that. So we'll pull that one out. We'll go here, and you can grab the anchor itself and pull out, and you can get it there, but it'll do it on both sides. So you can retract that by just clicking on the handle with anchor point one like that, and that's okay. But one reason I love Astute Graphics is I can go down here, and with their Path Scribe tool right here, this does the same thing where you can distort a path. But if you select a shape with that tool selected, notice it brings up these white nodes. What are these? These are what Astute Graphics calls ghost handles, and it gives you immediate access to the Bezier curve. It's super intuitive, super easy, and it's been in their plugin way before Illustrator took this tool and added somewhat of the same functionality, but you can't customize this. And what do you mean by that? Well, if I go on this and I go ahead and double click on this tool, it does nothing because it is what it is, and that's it. You can't do anything. Now, with the Path Scribe tool, the beautiful thing about this, if I double click this, look at all the customized settings I can create, and I can make it behave the way I want it to. And that's why using plugins are absolutely an awesome way to be more efficient as you create, and you can make the software behave the way you prefer it to, not the way some engineer decided it should be who never actually uses the software. That's why I like plugins. So let's go back. We're going to finesse this. Let's go ahead and finesse these curves like that. And I think I'm going to bring these a little further down. We'll do this one. I want this curve. I'm just looking at the shape here, and I just want to make sure it looks nice and fluid. I think we need to adjust up here. This needs to pull over more. And this one, like that. We'll lower this one. And that's all we're going to do is just finesse these curves. So you don't have to be fast. I actually think you shouldn't go too fast as you build. You should make sure you're making something the best you can. Here, we'll go ahead and grab this handle. It needs to be a bit beefier down at the bottom, like that. We'll go to this midway point, and I'm going to pull these up because they need to create that curve. We'll pull this down to form the back side, maybe up a little. This one, pull that down, and then this one, we'll pull this one up, kind of like that. This one we'll pull down. So there's only two types of anchors in Illustrator: smooth, which are the kind like this, and corner, which are these. I think we'll bring that up just a little. So I kind of obsess over this level of precision. I sometimes I'll even switch to a different part of my artwork I'm working on and create some other shape, then come back to something like this and say, okay, do I like it? Do I think it's going to work? There. And I think we have our final shape for that. So I didn't want to skip over that because I wanted to show you, it's easy to talk about something, but I want to show you how to do it, how to think about it, and how to finesse your Bezier curves. I still think this could be a little better, like that. There we go. So that's how I would utilize the Clockwork Method to improve my craftsmanship. I think it'll improve yours as well. So give it a shot, see what you think. Now, once I had all the body parts, and once again, I like building in parts, it's just easier. Then I go to the cap. Now the cap is a little bit complex because you have all the gills that are going to be in there. But ultimately, the bottom part just started as elliptical shapes. I created those in a 90 degree where I rotated my sketch so it was 90 degrees, and it's easier to create shapes that way. And this just shows how I created the bottom part of the cap like this, and then just created a shape that's going to make up the top. And of course, my spots will work with that. Now, when it comes to the gills, these are just lines like that. And if I select all these, I just have to pick what weight these are going to be. I don't want them this thin. So let's zoom in. You can see I have this thickness. Right now, I think they're 1. Oh, they're 5.5. So I think we'll go 2, maybe 2.5. Beef them up, something like that. And I think that's a nice complement. It's not as thick as our line work, but we don't want it that thick. But it's beefy enough that it's not going to get lost at a smaller size. So I think that's going to work good. Now, usually at this point, I immediately jump to like my black and white artwork, but I've had people ask me, can you show that just so we can see how you do it? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So let me turn on this layer here. And you might be thinking, well, why is his cap missing? Because when I start fusing shapes together, I focus on certain things. And I wanted to do his hat. I keep wanting to say hat, but in a mushroom, they call it a cap. But it's basically his hat. That's what it's serving for this character. So you can see all of our shapes in the hand. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to select shapes like this. And we're going to go unite, so it unites them into one cohesive shape. We already did that with the glasses earlier, like this, but now we'll go up here, and I'm going to leave the ladybug as is. I'm not going to do anything with that, but we're going to go down to here, and I'll select his sleeve for the back arm here. So all these shapes, we'll go ahead and unite those together like that. This is just creating if we go to the appearance panel, you can see it's created a compound shape. That's fine. We're going to have to create some throwaway shapes. So the head goes behind the nose. So we don't want it showing through the glasses or his nose areas. So I'll create a throwaway shape, kind of like this, just so I can select that, select this shape, and we'll just go minus front just to trim it. So as it goes into those areas, it's going to just fuse with his head. We'll select his eyebrows here, and we'll go down to here, select all these shapes, and I have to be careful. I almost fused those. I don't want to fuse those yet. So I think, actually, let's deselect these here, and we'll select these, and I'll go ahead and unite all those. We have to create a few throwaway shapes. So we want this leg to go behind the leg in the foreground. So we'll have to go ahead and, see, when I created this shape together, right now it defaults as a group. And you're going to run into this in Illustrator. And if you don't pay attention, things will disappear. So if you're zoomed in, which happened to me when I first started using Illustrator, I'd work on this illustration. I zoomed in, working on some detail, not paying attention. Then I zoom out and I'm like, where'd my stuff go? It's because when it's a group like this, on a shape like this, let's go ahead and just fill it so you can see the shape I'm talking about here. Illustrator defaults to a group state. Now, if I take a shape like this, let's fill this with this gold color, and it's on top, all I want to do is trim away the shape. Now, when I used Macromedia Freehand, you could do this, and there was never a problem. But Illustrator, this is called expected behavior is what the engineers, and I call it wrong-headed thinking because it should never do this. Why should minusing a shape like this, if I click on the Pathfinder and minus it, why should it do that? How is that expected behavior? That's just stupid. But that's what they say. Now, there's a couple ways you could do it. You could, what I do is I just select this and I hit F7. F7 is a keyboard shortcut to make compound. So that's all I'm going to do is make a compound. Once it's a compound state, no longer a group, I can select this and I can minus front. But notice what it does. It reverts back to a group. So you always have to be watching that. I've covered this before in previous movies, but it's always good to remind you because you might think you're doing something wrong. Trust me, you're not. It's just the way Illustrator is. It gets finicky, and the engineers don't care because they never use the software. If they did, they'd go, well, what the hell? That's stupid. And they might fix it, but whatever. I've tried to explain this to them so many times. It's just deer in the headlights. They don't get it. Okay, let's go ahead and grab all this and unite all these together. Oops, forgot that shape. Unite all these together, and we'll take his mouth. We'll go ahead and unite these all together. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this, select everything, paste behind, so we bring those shapes up front like this. And we'll go ahead and color this. I'm going to use a process black like that. Here's his teeth. His teeth are going to be white, of course. He's not a smoker, so he wouldn't have yellow. Take these and minus front. So we have his teeth worked out. We have his tongue. You can see I trimmed it with the shape from the profile of his mouth. We'll go ahead and color that white. All the shapes in his eyes at this point, we're just going to go ahead and we can sample his teeth with the eyedropper, get all those in. The ladybug herself, like that. Talk about a variety. I never thought about this till now, but a ladybug, it just, I wonder what all the guy ladybugs think. I'm not a lady. I never thought about that. You know, they name the variety and it's a kind of a feminine name, ladybug, but they obviously have dudes. So I wonder if there's a technical term for that, like a dude ladybug, like, I don't know. Oh, I need to, let's go ahead and beef this up to what I think we settled on 2.5. That's good. Once all of these are set, we'll go to Object, we'll go to Path, and we'll go to Outline Stroke. It'll turn them into shapes. If I go to Keyline View, you can see they're no longer strokes. It's going to group it again, so this is where I'll just hit my keyboard shortcut, F7. And once again, if you want to know more about keyboard shortcuts, watch that on People of Process channel. I have a whole movie dedicated creating keyboard shortcuts, shows you how to create your own. So any routine tasks you do on a daily basis are a really good candidate for keyboard shortcuts. Now, one thing I want to point out on this is you want to pay attention to these lines. You don't want them to exceed off the edge. So if I go down here, you know, this one's fine, but you see how this one's not? You just want to make sure to draw that back and, oops, do I not have, oh, I have Smart Guides turned off. Command U turned on. That way you can drag it right on its path like that. Because if you didn't, you get a shape like that fused in. You don't want that. So pay attention to those details. Now that we have these shapes, zoom out a little more. We can close that. I'm going to take this shape, and just so you can see what I'm doing, I'll color it blue. Didn't want to do that. I forgot about this. It's not donut, so we need to bring this to the front, select this shape, minus front, select these two. Now we can color them blue like that. We don't need the outline. Let's unite them together like that. We'll take this. We'll go ahead and color it blue. Select this. Unite it together. Now, the reason why I'm doing this, because I want to get access to this inner shape here. So I'm going to go ahead and go in, click into isolation mode. You can see isolation mode's awesome. And I'll copy that to the clipboard, back out, and then I'll go Command F, which pastes in place. And just so you can see what I'm doing, I'll just outline this, get rid of the fill. We just made a copy of that interior shape, and I did that so I could select the spots with that shape and go intersect, and it trims all those into position like that. So let's go ahead and just fill those, this grayish blue, because that's what we want. Now, these, we need to create a throwaway shape to edit the blue so it stops where it needs to. It's going to stop there. You'll see a little bit of it there. And just a minute, I think. Let's do this. Like that. And then over here, I'm not sure if I want this part to show up. I'll see what it looks like before I make a decision there. Okay, like that. Select these two. Go to Pathfinder, unite those two together, change it to a compound, select the blue, and trim it. Now it's only showing. Did I lose? Oh, I did lose some. Okay. Again, I just did it again. And trust me, I've been using Illustrator for 22 years now, and I still do this because it's just stupid. So this shape was a group. It defaulted to a group, and I forgot to change it to a compound. I talked Illustrator into making all edits with the Pathfinder by default compound. Unless you don't want it a compound, then you can go to Object, you can go to Compound, you can go Release, which I think makes more sense than considering you never want a compound. It's just, I don't know, it's just dumb. So now that it's a compound, it won't disappear, but it'll revert back to a group. So that's a little bit annoying. I'm going to get rid of this because if I don't want it to come to a point here, I'll round that off at the next phase. So this now, once again, is a group. You want to make sure it's a compound. Then we want to select the gill shapes. We'll want to fuse those together. Once again, it'll revert to a group. Make sure it's a compound. Now all we're going to do is we're just going to move this down to our clean black and white layer like this. We can put the spots on the same layer here, turn off that layer. And now with this, I'll select this, select the mushroom, the top of the mushroom. We'll go ahead and unite this all together. It's going to default to whatever the topmost color is. In this case, it's blue. So let's go ahead and cut that to the clipboard, select our shades, paste behind, and now we have everything we need, and we'll go ahead and color the outline here, color these shapes black, and that's how I get the base black and white on a design like this. So it takes time. You have to pay attention, but I like doing it this way. I wouldn't want to create this design in strokes because it looked kind of boring and computer generated of sorts. So there's that. So I want to show you one other thing. And notice I combined all these shapes. So let's zoom in on one area here. And you can see these interior shapes with the gills. These look fine, but it comes to these points because we built with geometric shapes of sorts, just a line. So this is where I'll go in and I'll use, whether you could use the corner widget if you want to, like I would select these here, maybe on this position on each of these, we would just kind of round all these with the same tolerance, kind of like that on that side. Maybe the opposing side of all these shapes, We want rounding, but not that extensive. So we might do it a little thin. So you can use the rounding tool in Illustrator, but this is where I like using dynamic corners by Astute. It existed years before Illustrator ripped off the concept and kind of implemented it in a less intuitive way. I like this because you don't have to select anything. You just select the tool, go to any anchor point, and then you can pull it out as much as you want. If you like one, you can just click it, go to another one, and just apply that to those shapes. So that's why I love it. I use it all the time. I use both of them, but that's how I do it. So let's focus on this area with all these being straight. Here's what it looks like without subtle rounds. Here's what it looks like with subtle rounds. Look at how much it improves the illustration where, like on his cheek, these come to dagger points, his mouth, the bottom of his lip. Pay attention to those areas. I turn this on. See how much better it looks when you take the time to do those kind of subtle rounds. So I just wanted to show you that because that really buttons up a design overall. It was at this point, I'm looking at this design going, you know, it needs, I want the outermost line thicker. So this is where I would just make a copy of that outer line just so you can see I'm doing. I'll color it here. We'll give it an outline, and then I'm going to beef it up here, and we'll do, I don't know, maybe 5 points. Let's see what that looks like. 3, 4, 5. And if we push it to the back, we'll select it, select all the art, paste behind. You can see it's kind of adding thickness just to the outside area. And if I go ahead and color this, that color, that looks pretty good. But the only thing I don't like, I definitely like it better with that as opposed, let's make a comparison. Let's go to our original clean. So with the thick outline, without, and I think it looks a little anemic without it, and I think it looks better with it. So we'll keep that. The only thing I don't like is it's getting a little tight over here and a little tight here and a little tight here. So I want to show you how you can finesse those kind of things. If we select the arm, you can see we have this anchor point. This is just a long curve. So I think how we can adjust this as easy as possible is just use the lasso tool to just select those anchors like that, and then use the direct selection to click on an anchor and just reposition it a little bit. Just add some breathing room like that. And that's how I'd refine it. Now I might have to tweak my paths here. Just, you can see it's gotten a little thin there. So this is where I would go back and adjust some of this like that just to improve it. And I'd do that. And if I have to, I'd make a new copy. Actually, let's just do that. We'll go like this. And I'll take the outline. I'll delete it. I'll go here. And I'm just going to finesse this a bit. Turn off Smart Guides because it's trying to snap like that. Might want to zoom in. I'm going to adjust that. Something like that. Then I'll make a new copy. And we'll go ahead and make the outline black. And beef it up to what we're doing. Make sure we have round corners turned on. And I copy this, select all my artwork, paste behind, and I think that looks better. So that's all I do is I adjust it. And I do that same kind of adjustment on my foot. So this is what it was with the outline, with just one thing adjusted. This is adjusting both like that. And we added the same thickness around the ladybug's body as well, just so that ties in. And I think that looks really good, and it improves the overall artwork. Now, ultimately, the colors, and if you remember back on my sketch, I had written out, let's turn this off, I'd written out black, red, yellow, white, and light blue because I was even thinking of colors back then. So I just wanted to show you that. And these are the colors I'm going to put in here. But it's at this point, I'm going to print this out because I like doing my drawn shading to figure out how I'm going to shade this, even if I haven't colored it yet. And so I print it out, and then I draw on top of it. Here's my drawing on top of my printout here. Now, when I bring this into Illustrator, I'm going to use this to build. So I'll go multiply so it shows through to my final art. And then I'll adjust the opacity because we don't need it to be that dark. And I'll lock the layer like I do my initial sketch. And then I'll build out all my shapes on it like that. Now, the one thing I did when I drew it out is I thought, you know what would be a lot of fun is to give it a fun drop shadow. So you can see I've drawn it out there like that. So we're going to end up building that with the shading detail as well. But let's go ahead and color the base art here. The base art, we're going to make the cap here. That's going to be red, obviously, on the ladybug. We're going to make her body is just basically black and red like that. And we'll go ahead and select, I'm going to use this as the shading color in his skin. His skin will just be white. This will end up being a gold color like that. We'll end up making all the gills will end up being this kind of color. The spots are going to be gold as well. We're going to go in here and make just part of the reflection gold. Then we're going to make these rim kind of highlights, this blue color. His tongue, we have red, so we'll make that red. So it's a pretty simple color palette that we're going to pull off for this. And we'd even make this reflective edge here blue. So you see that definition in the ladybug. So you saw how I drew out the shading, built the shading, and then the final detail with that shading looks like this. And I think this is a lot of fun. And I want to show you a few more things and show you how a design like this is very flexible to use in a lot of different ways. But I thought we need some type with this design. And I'm going to show you something. I don't do a lot, but sometimes it's just a good way to do it. So let's turn this layer on. I've shrunk my design down. I've created this profile box that's just a stroke, no fill, but it's on top of the type which I outlined. Now I picked a typeface that kind of looks hippie-ish of sorts, kind of groovy, if you will. And all we're going to do is we're going to distort this to fit into this to make it more compatible with our artwork and kind of flow with it. So if I select this, go to Object, we're going to go to Envelope Distort, and we're going to use Make with Top Object. Whatever object's on top, your type that you've outlined will distort within that. We'll click that, and you can see it creates this kind of distortion, which kind of follows the path here. This is still a live effect, so we have to go to Object, and we have to go Expand, and click OK to get access to the vectors. Now, it does a pretty good job of distortion, but some of these curves in here are a bit wonky and not really smooth. It gets a little tight down here, etc. So this is where I'll go back and I'll just finesse those details. So I'm going to turn this layer on, and you can see that's all I did is went back and finessed all the letter structures just to improve the readability on them. And that's not a hard thing. And it was at this point I'm going, well, I know a ladybug is black, but I kind of want to use a color that's reflective of nature more. And so one thing I do a lot is I'll select the color I want to change. And even though I use global colors at times, I like doing this even more. I'll select one and I'll go Option F1, which is a keyboard shortcut. And the reason why I use that because, well, let's show you how to do it without a keyboard shortcut. If I select this letter form, which represents black as the color I want to select, if you go to Select, you pull down to Same, and you go to Fill Color, and you click on it, it's going to select all objects on your layer that you're working on that are that same color. And it actually, any layer that's turned on and viewable, it'll select as well. So make sure you have layers you don't want it to do that turned off. and it's selected all the black. Now I can go, what color do I want? Well, I'll try this dark blue color. Well, that's an outline. I want to do the fill, dark blue color, and that looks kind of cool. You still know it's a ladybug because it's a dark enough color. Now, I never do it that way because I never want to go up to these pull-down menus. I've set up a keyboard shortcut, which is Option F1, so I can select a letter. Let's say I want to select all the blue, and I just go Option F1. It does the exact same thing. It's a keyboard shortcut. Once again, it's going to save you a lot of time, and I think the better color would be this dark green. I think that looks even better. It goes with the kind of the thematic quality we have going here. If we wanted to do this on a t-shirt that was a dark green t-shirt, you just want to create a halo around your art. Now, sometimes when you do screen printing, I never see this on digital printed t-shirts, but sometimes on screen printing, use what's called a sublimated ink. So it makes a diminished value of the base color of the shirt, such as this green. And this isn't how you do it, but this is just to show you what I mean. So you might have a color that looks kind of like this. So sublimated just means it's sublimating the ink, and it goes kind of sucks up into the shirt, and you get the outline like this. I think it needs to be just a little lighter. And it would help you create a design that would pop something off on a darker color. Now, in this case, I don't think that looks bad, but for whatever reason, I just still think white looks better. And so I'm just going to leave it as white. Now, when I like wearing t-shirts though, I like simplifying them. And so I thought a one color would be cool. Here's a one color, and I think I like this even more just as a one color if I'm going to wear a t-shirt of it. I think I would turn the full color into other things like stickers. I'll show you that in a little bit. But again, like with this design, it's all one color white. Well, there's a lot of flexibility here. Maybe you want to go to a yellow like this. That looks even cooler than white on a green color like this. So there's a lot of flexibility. Of course, you can do any kind of color you want on a shirt. Maybe you have a blue color and you do this green like this, or you could select it. And I think this looks even cooler with a pink color on a blue shirt. So a lot of color flexibility. Here's a bunch of explorations I did just to show you how it works on different colors. Of course, I'm going to take just the character itself and the full color, turn it into stickers. So that'll be fun. Eventually, these will be on my site. They're not there yet. And whenever I work on a character like this, I like turning it into a badge design as well. So I did that with this character. Here's the fun guy, mushroom foraging. So this is a seal. This shows some options on how you could change colors and lock it up in different ways. Here's it done in a one color on a light colored t-shirt. I think this looks great as well. And it's a more simplified format. So a lot of things you can do. At some point, I'll come back to that gutted out sketch I showed you at the very beginning and flesh that out because I think it'd be a lot of fun, but I'll wait a while before I do that. Character designs like this are just a blast to work on. So I encourage you to think of a genre, topic, or concept you could turn into an illustrative character and put your own creative spin on it and give the process of the Clockwork Method a test. See how that does for you. Once again, the exercise files include my chapter on the Clockwork Method to help you out. So if you do, please share whatever you create with me. I'd love to see what you guys are doing. I have a lot of new content planned for this year, and you could help this channel by liking, sharing, subscribing, or even becoming a member of this channel. All of this will help equip me to keep developing fun, creative projects I can share with you. Until next time, thank you for watching, people of Process. I really do appreciate it. And as always, I hope this content helps you to improve your own creative process.